we celebrate November, recognized as the Native American Heritage Month. And with that today, I'm so excited to bring and share with you. We have guests today. We have two Native employees that I'd love to have them introduce themselves. And of course, we can't forget our secretary and allow him to do introduction. And then we're going to have a little Q&A between our secretary as well as our brothers and sisters. And please know that within all parts of DOT, within our umbrella of DOT in all modes and all programs, we reach out and say hello, yat to our brothers and sisters that are there working at USDOT. With that, I'd like to hand the introduction over to my sister, Ms. Renelle Yazzie. Ma'am, you have to unmute yourself. There you go.
Yat bine Renelle Yazzie and Shia, the Nenschle, Kintla Cheatney and Shle, Twota Cheatney Bushes Cheen. Hello, good morning. I also introduce myself in my native language. I'm Navajo. I'm a Red House, from the Red House clan and also the Bitterwater clan. I work for the Federal Aviation Administration. I am also the national president for the Native American Alaskan Native Coalition for Federal Aviation Employees.
Mr. Anthony.
Good morning. My name is Anthony Spann. I'm an enrolled member of the Tohono Nation. I work in the Office of Federal Lands Highway, Office of Tribal Transportation as a tribal coordinator. Thank you for having me this morning.
Thank you very much, Mr. Spann and Ms. Yazzie. And Mr. Secretary, if you don't mind introducing yourself. Thank you.
Well, thank you. First of all, Orlando, thank you to you and your team for the terrific work that you're doing, to all of our DOT colleagues who are viewing this event, and especially to our participants. Native American Heritage Month is important to this department. It's important to me. And it is an acknowledgement of not only our role, but our work and how that relates to the heritage and the government-to-government relationships across this country between us and Indian country. I come from South Bend, Indiana, an area originally known as San Baldanek or Ribbon Town in the language of the native Potawatomi people. And I was very proud during my time as mayor that we became the first place in the state of Indiana to have federally recognized Indian country within our city limits. I'm also the son of a linguist who conducted research on Potawatomi, Menominee, and Quechua languages. And so it's especially moving to hear how each of you take steps to continue the critically important linguistic tradition of your respective tribal ancestry. And again, just delighted to be here. I would love, as our event begins, to hear from each of our guests a little bit about how you came to work at the Department of Transportation, especially with a view toward what lessons that might have for how we could encourage more tribal members to become part of the USDOT team.
That's a fantastic question, Secretary. Again, thank you. Yes, language is very important to us. It is our keeper of our culture. And we mustn't forget that the songs and the prayers that have brought us here, individual as tribal folks, tribal individuals, to where we're at really has to do with our family and how they prayed and how they encouraged, well, for me, how I was encouraged to continue praying and how that will continually push me forward. And so the questions I think our secretary has is for both participants, Ms. Yazzie and Mr. Spann, if you don't mind responding to Mr. Secretary.
Sure, I'll go ahead. So I am enrolled in the Navajo Diné. I'm originally from Shiprock, New Mexico, but I live in Salt Lake City, Utah. I left there so that I could go to school and pursue higher education. I began working at the U.S. Department of Transportation when I was notified by my Native American advisor at my community college that there was an opening at the FAA. She gave me the address and I went there, and I was hired as a stay in school. So, and after I graduated from the University of Utah, they offered me a full-time employment, and was very excited to accept it.
Terrific. Anthony, could you share your story a little bit?
Was that for me?
Yes,
Oh,
I'd love to know about your journey into the department.
Oh, sorry about that. Well, mine was a little more circuitous. I was born and raised in California. Tohono O'odham's traditional lands are what's in southwestern Arizona right now. We're a border tribe. My brothers and I were a direct result of the Indian Relocation Act, which was part of the termination era policy, which moved natives off the reservation and put them in urban areas. So me and my brothers, I have three brothers. We were all born off reservation. We're the first generation off reservation. So when I started my career in engineering, I was doing land development on the private side for about 10 years. Then when the economy went the way it did in 2008, many of us lost our jobs, and I happened to see this job with the Bureau of Indian Affairs. They were advertising for a transportation. I think it was the term was kind of funny. They just called it a roads guy. I didn't really even understand what the job was, but I never forgot that in the posting it said that the BIA was a dynamic and challenging place to work, and boy, they were not kidding. So I just happened to be working in the tribal transportation program. I wasn't aware when I first started that it was a jointly administered program between federal highways and the BIA. So I did about 4 years there with the BIA, and then I left, and I got picked up in 2014 after about 2 months break in service by federal highways, because they were looking for somebody with my expertise, the combination of having the private sector land development experience and what I had learned in the BIA about the tribal transportation program. So that's where I've been ever since 2014 till now. I've worked as a tribal coordinator, working with as many tribes as I possibly can. I started out in Alaska, and then I was working in the Western Federal Lands Building, and I moved down to California. Now I'm just focusing on the California tribes.
Terrific. Well, we're glad that you're here, both of you, and each of our Native colleagues across DOT. Since we are marking the heritage of so many of the tribes that are represented at DOT, I would also love from each of you just that you're a part of, and what you wish that maybe was better known about your respective tribe. Let me perhaps begin again first by turning Renelle to you to share a little more about the Diné, the Navajo heritage that you come from.
Thank you. Yes, I'm actually very proud to, my father is a veteran, but also in that same sense that the Diné, were very instrumental in the World War II with the Navajo Code Talkers. So I'm very proud to be part of that history. And as far as culture, as Orlando mentioned, it's very important to us to keep our traditions alive. And I'm very happy that the agency is allowing us to do and participate in many things that come with Native American Month. I know that at least in the FAA, I will be hosting some lunch and learns. And it's really with just natives who are going to just speak about our culture. For instance, Miss Navajo Nation, she will explain what it is. It's kind of like you look at a USA pageant, and it's similar in that sense. However, the activities involved in it are very culture and our tradition and how we were raised growing up, especially on the reservation. Because I grew up on the reservation my entire life, well, at least until I was 18. And I've been with the agency for 29 years. And this is, as Orlando mentioned, this is a huge thing for us to be able to do this roundtable this month and allow and share our cultures and traditions with everyone.
It's great to hear, and that sharing and that pride, I think, is so powerful and important within the employees of DOT. And it's a great reminder also that, if I'm not mistaken, there is no ethnic or racial group in America that has contributed more proportionally to the U.S. Armed Services than Native Americans. And there's that particular heritage with the Code Talkers that's such an important part of history. Thanks for sharing that. Anthony, what can we learn about the Tohono O'odham Nation and that history and culture?
Well, that's a very interesting question to ask myself. As I mentioned, being colloquially known as an urban Indian, you're removed from the culture in the sense that you're not immersed in it constantly. I feel very fortunate in the career path that I've entered to be able to work with the tribes to where I can learn not only more about my own culture, but more about the other cultures of tribes, because there's 574 different federally recognized tribes, and they're all different. So my perspective on Native culture is a little different in that it's not specific to my tribe as much as it is to all tribes, because I've had the pleasure of working with so many of them and hearing their stories. And I'm continually amazed at the level of unity there is among all of the tribes, and that when you talk to them, they refer to you as brothers and sisters, and it's very communal. And that goes across the different tribal boundaries, if you want to use that term, because it is a people. And we all share certain things in common. And when you look at it from that perspective, I always say we're more alike than anybody chooses to admit sometimes. And for me personally, being Native, it has its pluses and its minuses, because sometimes it's good to be referred to as Native, sometimes it's not. It totally depends on the environment that you're in. So I've had an interesting time dealing with all of those different facets of it. But in my work with DOT, I have seen that they have made tremendous strides in working with tribal nations. And it's comforting to know that there's an organization that actually is doing so much to further the cause for Natives as a people, and specifically in transportation, because we all know there's a lot of issues out there and they're not going to change overnight. But I think this opportunity that we have here is a good start.
Well, I think so too. And I think that's a really great perspective for our work overall. Let me return the virtual podium, Orlando, to you, because I know that there were questions that our guests had as well, and want to make sure that we can get as many of those in as time allows. So I'll let you guide the second half of our program.
Thank you very much, Secretary. Those are really good questions asked to my brothers and sisters, and not just Renelle and Anthony, but also those that are listening throughout the umbrella of USDOT. Now, the folks here have put together questions, and we're really excited to share with us. And I think we'll be really pleased to hear some responses from our leader, Do Nana and Renelle, I'll shoot it over to you for the first question that you'll be asking our secretary.
Thank you. So Secretary Pete, you've been actively engaged with tribes and tribal organizations since you've joined the administration. How do you see continuing this momentum?
So as you say, we've got momentum that we can build on, and we're proud of that. We have, I think, reached a new level of engagement, but we regard that as a beginning. In particular, I'm very pleased that we've had the kind of engagement that has brought us face to face, both in person and virtually, with our tribal partners. And this is also one of the reasons why appointing our Deputy Assistant Secretary for Tribal Affairs was an immediate priority. And Orlando has been leading and coordinating so much good engagement with the modes, one at a time, as well as at the agency level. So we feel a real responsibility to keep up the momentum that we've established and have results to show for it each passing year.
Thank you. Anthony, do you have a question ready for Mr. Secretary?
Yes, Secretary Pete, what's your vision for DOT as it relates to projects in Indian country?
Well, I think the vision begins with making sure that there's always a seat at the table for tribes. So many decisions that are made impact them directly, and this is a sovereign relationship. And so we're going to continue following the process that's in our tribal consultation policy, making sure that tribes have an opportunity to be heard, and recognize that that's never been more important because we're on the cusp of historic increased investments in tribal transportation infrastructure. If you look at what's in the bipartisan infrastructure framework that the president has put forward, as well as eligibility for programs that are longstanding, we have opportunities to improve the nationally significant federal lands and tribal projects program, which can make sure that more dollars get directly to tribal governments. We've got a pilot coming together in the Build America Bureau that will specifically provide assistance to tribal and rural communities, where we need to make sure that we're a good partner as an agency. And when we think about our priorities like improving roadway safety, that's something that we know is disproportionately impacting Indian country. And so establishing particular measures like a higher set aside for safety in the tribal transportation program, standardizing crash reporting so that we have better data. All of these, I think, are going to be important steps forward. We're also finally standing up the Tribal Transportation Self-Governance Program. This was first put forward in the 2015 authorization, and that creates a new pathway for direct funding. So there are a lot of steps that are underway, more coming. And let me also mention that just within the interagency, we view DOT as playing an important role at that broader US government table, which is one of the reasons why we're enthusiastically embracing our role at the White House Council on Native American Affairs.
Thank you.
So a lot happening at the top as that will trickle down to all of us within DOT. Renelle, do you have your second question ready, ma'am?
Yes, thank you. So how do you see your administration building interest in Indian country to encourage more Native Americans to come work for here at DOT?
Well, there's no question that our department and our government will do a better job of engaging with and serving tribes if more of our members come from Indian country. So I think some clear areas where we can make a lot of progress include engaging tribal colleges and universities. You shared your story of how this opportunity crossed your radar when you were a student. That's how a lot of people's stories with the DOT begin, and we want to make the most of that. We also want to engage areas where, as you had, Anthony, private sector experience, when we see people who are building skills are going to be relevant, we want to find them. I know there's a Society of American Indian Government Employees, SAGE, which I think provides a lot of insight and expertise and can help us have the right presence. And ultimately, we're going to rely on you as well. On we're not that we're going to put all of the work on our tribal employees, but you have more expertise and insight than anybody on how we can reach out to Native American would-be colleagues. And of course, we'll want to learn from your insights and turn to you to help get the word out about how rewarding a career in the department can be.
Okay, we have room for one more question. Anthony, if you don't mind.
Yes, Secretary P, can you tell us how DOT will advance the federal policy of self-determination and self-governance for Indian tribes?
So this is where that tribal transportation self-governance program comes in, and I think is going to make a big difference because it's one thing to have good intentions; it's another to really be putting dollars through a new mechanism that's going to demonstrate our commitment and our regard for tribal sovereignty. So we're going to be following progress on that program in my office very closely, and we really want to make sure we're building awareness too. I think we need to meet tribes where they are. Some are multi-state, large, very established, well-resourced, and sophisticated governments. Others are very small with very few resources and sometimes very little experience engaging federally. As you mentioned, 574 tribes with 574 different stories and levels of capacity. And so I think what we really need to do is recognize the principle is the same, that self-determination, self-governance, and that government-to-government relationship, that's the same across all 574. But the terms that they want to engage us on are going to be different. And we shouldn't have a one-size-fits-all mentality. And that's part of why I think the intention that everyone is bringing to this engagement is going to be so important in the years ahead.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Secretary. And we sincerely appreciate this opportunity to share with you and also ensure that our efforts here within the administration is continually growing, and that our connection to communities all across this great nation is not leaving the tribal communities out. In fact, that is the main reason why we are here today, is to ensure that we're reaching out to our brothers and sisters and helping us engage with the next tribal youth who is interested in working for the FAA, for MORAD, for Federal Highway, even in this capacity as Deputy Secretary for Tribal Affairs. I think that's really important that we work within our own communities and our own efforts to express and address that this administration and this leadership is focused on inclusivity and sharing and working with communities. So you hear from actually, she's my grandmother, Renelle, like clan, she's my grandmother. And so that means that anything she says, I have to do. It doesn't make, if she wants bread, I have to make bread for her. So, and then my brother, Anthony, thank you so much. Renelle, I sincerely appreciate this phenomenal opportunity to share with myself and our leadership a bit about who we are and where we come from and so forth. So it's important. And with that, I sincerely appreciate this wonderful month of November. But I always say, even when I was at home in Arizona, every day is Native American Day. Every day. This is important to me as a Navajo man. Res kid, if you will, grew up middle of the reservation herding sheep. And with that, I offer my closure and opportunity to all to continue dialoguing on this wonderful month of our heritage. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, yeah.